Dear listeners, welcome to the Deep Journal channel. By subscribing to our channel, you can be informed about detailed reports every time. The Cold War in the east of Europe has now been replaced by a hot conflict. The footsteps of the war are heard all over Europe. There have been many important developments in recent days. The Ukrainian armed forces destroyed 2 Russian tanks with the Javelin complex, which it bought from the United States. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine shared videos where 2 Russian tanks were destroyed by the American anti-tank missile system, Javelin. In fact, this is the first known use of American ATGMs by the Ukrainian military, and apparently, in the current escalation, the Ukrainian formations are very actively aiming to use this weapon. 2 missiles were launched from the American anti-tank missile system, Javelin, and with a powerful explosion destroyed both tanks that the Russian-backed militia had taken from Russia. A powerful explosion after an anti-tank missile hit a heavily armored vehicle may indicate that the tank's ammunition has exploded. With this development, the tension in the Donbass region of Ukraine was revealed. Now, US and Russian ammunitions are actively used in the region. Despite the use of these ammunition in the region, reinforcements from both countries continue to arrive in the region. Experts note that the weapons provided by the American side to the Ukrainian armed forces can be very effective. Presumably, the self-proclaimed republics are also aware of this and have begun to put Russian tanks and other armored vehicles on the front lines. Russian-backed militias in Donbass, on the other hand, may buy Russian Hermes in response to the Javelins bought by Ukraine from the United States in the region. These guns are reported to be able to destroy a tank battalion in a single assault salvo. If this weapon, which seems very dangerous in active warfare, falls into the hands of the Donbass militia, it may pose a great threat to the US weapon presence in the region. Russia also continues to send large troops to the region. It is said that Russia, which is reported to have amassed 120,000 units of troops on the Ukrainian border, plans to finally send TOS-2 and TOS-1 a heavy flamethrower systems to the Ukrainian border. The published report claims that these powerful weapons, which can be a precaution against an attack from Ukraine to Russia, will deal a major blow to Ukraine's offensive ability. The attacks carried out by the Bayraktar TB2 unmanned aerial vehicles, which Ukraine bought from Turkey, continue. Ukraine, which carried out 2 missile attacks on Dokuches, carried out these attacks with drones, and the attacks successfully destroyed the targets. The United States, on the other hand, announced that it had sent FIM-92 Steininger air defense systems and Javelin anti-tank systems to Ukraine to support the Ukrainian armed forces in Donbass, with a statement made yesterday. At the same time, he announced that the United States would send a military helicopter to Ukraine alongside these weapons. The lock in the region seems to be broken in Donbass. An active intervention by the USA or Russia may occur at any moment in the region where the alarm bells are ringing loudly. Regardless of which side this intervention comes from, the other country aims to complete its preparations against it. Let's examine the details of the attacks and the arms shipments of the USA and Russia to the region together. The Ukrainian armed forces began to use American ATGM Javelin complexes in Donbass. The American side confirmed the fact of the first successful use of the American Javelin anti-tank missile systems by the Ukrainian army in Donbass. Complexes, Javelin, were used in one of the recent collisions. Howard Altman, editor-in-chief of the American edition of Military Times, reported that Kirill Budanov, head of the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, confirmed in an interview the successful use of American Javelin anti-tank missile systems in Donbass. Budanov told me that Ukrainian troops used Javelin in battle. This is in history, Altman said, stressing that details on this matter will appear in the near future and, probably, video footage of the use of ATGMs against DPR units will also be published. Meanwhile, in response to American Javelins, Donbass may receive Russian Hermes, capable of destroying a battalion of tanks in one salvo. After Ukraine quite publicly announced the start of the use of American Javelin missile systems in the Donbass, Russia is donating serious and critical weapons to the region to strengthen the Donbass Russian-backed militia against Ukraine equipped with US equipment. The supply of Russian-made Hermes missile systems to the DPR and LPR militias seems to intensify the war in the region. Russia seems to be trying to intervene in the region and feed the war and chaos in the region by giving heavy weapons to the DPR and LPR, alleging that the West and Kiev are clearly violating the Minsk agreements. Thanks to the firepower of the Russian Hermes missile system, targets can be hit with guaranteed success at distances up to 100 kilometers. At the same time, a single hit on the enemy's tank has a 100% probability of destroying it. In addition, Russia will send heavy flamethrower systems TOS-2, Tosachka, and TOS-1A, Solantsep-EK, to the border with Ukraine. Russian heavy flamethrower systems will be placed near the border with Ukraine. The Russian military intend to send their heavy flamethrower systems TOS-2, Tosachka, and TOS-1A, Solantsep-EK, to the border with Ukraine. This weapon could significantly strengthen Russian-backed militias, gaining new defensive capabilities in their attacks on Ukraine and Europe. At the moment, it is known that the Russian Ministry of Defense intends to form 3 new battalions with heavy flamethrower systems in the southern military district by 2027. The new units will consist of the Solantsep-EK system, which is already a fairly well-known heavy flamethrower system, as well as the newest TOS-2, Tosachka, which is preparing for mass adoption. The key reason for the formation of 3 new battalions from heavy flamethrower systems is that these weapons can significantly increase the firepower of the Russian army, and the appearance of heavy flamethrower systems in the southern military district makes it possible to cover Crimea, the border with Ukraine and the Caucasus. Several months ago, the Russian heavy flame-throwing systems, Tosachka, and Solantsep-EK, took part in military exercises. To respond to the Russian military support to DPR and LPR militias against Ukraine, the United States announced the sending of its military, air defense systems and anti-tank systems to Ukraine. The United States of America intends in the near future to send several dozen of its military personnel to Donbass, as well as various types of weapons. According to the Russian news agencies, among the weapons considered for delivery are FIM-92, Stinger, air defense systems and more, Javelin, anti-tank systems. American military and media sources are also reporting that the U.S. plans to send military advisors and weapons to Ukraine and will deploy more ATGM Javelin and Manpad Stinger systems to Ukraine. According to experts, such aid is seen in Kiev against the backdrop of fears of an alleged Russian invasion, but Moscow denies it. Also, in addition to all of this, the United States announced the supply of military helicopters to Ukraine. The United States of America intends to significantly strengthen the units of the Ukrainian Air Force with new equipment and transfer to this country's armament several Mi-17 combat helicopters, which were previously supposed to be transferred to the Afghan army. The exact number of combat rotorcraft is not named, however, at the moment. The Pentagon recommends the U.S. presidential administration to transfer these helicopters to the armed forces of Ukraine. Nevertheless, Washington fears that this may anger Russia, and therefore such a decision is still in question. The U.S. Department of Defense insists that Ukraine should receive some equipment previously planned to be transferred to Afghanistan, for example, Russian Mi-17 helicopters. The Mi-17 is a Russian helicopter originally purchased by the United States to be handed over to the Afghans. The Pentagon is now considering what to do with them after the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan in August. But others in the administration are concerned that Russia may view the Stinger and helicopter missions as a serious escalation. And although they are ready to send military advisors to the region, it is not clear whether anyone will actually go to Ukraine. The fact that both Russia and the USA send such weapons to the region may herald serious conflicts in the future, and both sides seem to be trying to blame each other for the escalation of the conflict. Washington and Moscow seem to deliberately escalate the situation in the Donbass, given the fact that the U.S. has previously announced the transfer of additional weapons to the Ukrainian armed forces, and Russia's deployment of an army to the border that could destroy Ukraine and supplying powerful weapons to the DPR and LPR militias. But it is very likely that Russia will respond to the U.S. moves by equipping its DPR and LPR forces with more modern weapons and equipment. And for that, Russia seems to have much more opportunity and strategic advantage. In addition to the tension between the USA and Russia, Turkey also gives very serious military support to Ukraine, and because of this support, there are serious conflicts between Turkey and Russia. Against Turkey's support to Ukraine, Russia deployed S-400 air defense systems to the region against Bayraktar TB2 attack drones. UAV Bayraktar TB2 UAV delivered 2 missile strikes on Dkuchesk. Yesterday, the Bayraktar TB2 attack drone of the armed forces of Ukraine inflicted at least 2 missile strikes on the outskirts of Dkuchesk. The data on the use of the Bayraktar TB2 attack drone are confirmed by the monitoring resources, according to which a few hours before the attack, the drone took off from the Kulbakino airfield and headed eastward. Moreover, according to sources of the armed forces of Ukraine, all recent flights of the Bayraktar TB2 drone were carried out with the presence of MAM-C ammunition in the drone's armament. This also confirms the information about the new combat use of these UAVs by the Ukrainian military.